The Leisure Diary of John Mcbean, are reported by Isamanuensis, George Donald McBlear. The fortune and misfortune of the infamous John Mcbean, who was born in Newton-le-Willows, Lancashire, England, and during a life of continued variety for 70 years and more, was 12 years abused of vulnerable women, a flagellator, despoiler, 5 times a husband. A thief throughout his life, several times convicted, under alias, at last grew rich, live honest but unrepentant. Any similarity to the faux Moll Flanders is purely coincidental.
Flight TG 955. Oslo-Bangkok. 20 Dezember 2019 Sitting in Seat 39S of the Thai Airways flight from Oslo to Bangkok. John was drinking copious amounts of free cognac and red wine. He was trying to alleviate his feeling of knackeredness, after months spent working and clearing out his apartment in New York Village, Oslo, Norway, with the vague idea of renting it out, in order to restore his faltering finances. This was the first time he had left Oslo since August 2019, so he felt he deserved some time off to focus on intercourse with others. As noted above, this is the diary of John Mcbean as reported by his amanuensis, George Donald McBlear. John always traveled with his diary, as he believed one should have something sensational to read on the planet or train. He took out his diary and started to read it, making some notes.
John appreciated their friendship and said on more than one occasion, "You are such a trusty comrade, and a chronicler of my life." John was what you might say a reprobate. So he appreciated having a sober and rational friend like George. In other words, as mentioned, John was like Sherlock Holmes. Holmes was a genius and addicted to drugs. John was also a genius and addicted to good red wine, and other medicaments, and Asian girls. Of course, the reader might suspect that there was some kind of homosexual attraction between John and George. There will always be a gay subtext of such buddy stories, as is evident in the so-called buddy movies. But let's face it, men learn to love themselves before they love women. So in one sense all men are homosexuals. But we will not investigate this theme further here, but just highlight the peculiar relationship between John and George.
I am the narrator. My name is George Donald McBlear. I'm a friend of John's. John is also a narrator on some occasions, but I am the main narrator. However, before we progress further, I should perhaps add some comments as an introduction. In fact, this travelogue is just a continuation of several others. So I am the narrator, George Donald McBlear. I'm not really a character in the story, but a mere amanuensis.
And now, friend reader, you must prepare your heart and your mind for the most boring and inane tale that has ever been told since our world began, a book the likes of which was never encountered, neither amongst the ancients nor among us moderns. This travelogue is filled with prejudices, boring and repetitive descriptions, inane observations, and drunken ramblings. I would have liked to have included more perverse, immodest and disgusting details, but John is a fairly ordinary man, so his tastes do not wander far outside the scope of accepted norms. Of course, if John had been very rich and powerful, a president, financier, movie producer or TV personality, or of noble birth, for example, a king or a prince, he could perhaps have allowed his appetites more leeway. But unfortunately, being an ordinary man, his tastes were kept within limitations due to the fear of the law or the admonishment from people with whom he socialized. Nevertheless, I advise the intelligent, over-modest or politically correct reader to set this book aside, so they are not shocked.
One of the reasons John was in the red was because he was suffering from a double malady, yellow fever, and young girl fever, nymphet fever. In a futile attempt to cure himself of yellow fever, he thought he had to instruct as many yellow girls as possible. This is not true. He didn't want to be cured, but wallowed in his sickness. While sipping on yet another cognac 2 or 3 hours into the flight, he noted down the names of the students he had instructed in the past, while the Mambo song was spinning around his head. Kimmy, Girly, Lynn, Nadine, Jane, Mel, Rihanna, Sabrina, Divine, Jovinan, Kimberly, Josie's cousin, Ploy, Lola, Fernaoem.
One, two, three, four, five. Everybody in the car, so come on, let's ride to the liquor store around the corner. The boys say they want some gin and juice, but I really don't wanna be a buzz like I had last week. I must stay because talk is cheap. I like Angela, Pamela, Sandra, and Rita. And as I continue, you know they're getting sweeter. So what can I do? I really bag you, my lord. To me, flirting is just like a sport. Anything fly, it's all good. Let me jump in, please sing in the trumpet. A little bit of Monica in my life. A little bit of Erica by my side. A little bit of Rita's all I need. A little bit of Tina's what I see. A little bit of Sandra in the sun. A little bit of Mary all night long. A little bit of Jessica, here I am. A little bit of you makes me your man. Mambo number 5. Jump up and down and move it all around. Shake your hand to the sound. Put
A little bit of Sabrina in my life, a little bit of Kimberly by my side, a little bit of Rihanna is all I need, a little bit of Girly is what I see.
My name is Professor John Mcbean. This is a true story, an account of my travels, teaching, and research. I include a sketch of myself here, which was done by a street artist on Sukhumvit Road in Bangkok.
When John was in Norway, he was Dr. Jekyll, not so much out of choice, but due to social pressure in the good society of Norway. In other words, he is a respected professor who is considered to be mainly a good person by the people in his social circle. But he has another side to his character that is not revealed. He is hardly evil, in the sense of Edward Hyde, but his behavior towards young students in the East is perhaps not socially acceptable, in a Norwegian or Western context. But unlike Dr. Jekyll, John did not need to take various drugs to metamorphose into his evil self. All he had to do was buy an air flight ticket to the East. Although, like Jekyll, he was also dependent on certain blister beetle potions. Today, we have many so-called Mr. Hydes, Prince Andrew of England, Jeremy Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, Bill Cosby, and so on. Ad infinitum, the list is never ending. John plans his teaching itinerary. As pointed out, John was on a Thai Airways flight, and as usual, he had consumed large amounts of excellent free red wine and cognac, and was now a little fired up. He made his teaching plan. Manila students Rihanna, 3 days tuition at City Garden Grand Hotel, Kimmy, 5 days tuition, Sign, 5 days tuition, Sabrina Chris, 1 day's tuition, Nan Hannah, 1 day's tuition, Cebu students, teaching plan, Mel, 3 days tuition, Nadine, 3 days tuition, Lynn, 3 days tuition, Gurley, 3 days tuition, Jovi, 3 days tuition, Jan, 1 day's tuition. Conclusion. John felt quite happy about his proposed teaching plan. In fact, he seemed to only feel happy when teaching students, or preparing teaching plans, or writing summaries about what they had achieved.